I'm so glad you could join us for our musical tour of the South. And our special guest is that beautiful little clown you just saw dancing at the Mardi Gras. Please welcome my pal, Kathy Lennon.
Thanks, Mary. It's great to be here. Really is.
This show must bring back memories for you.
Oh, it does. You know, it was a fun show watching. The first thing that stood out for me was how gorgeous Norma always is.
Now, when you joined the show, you were little girls. And Alice Lawn was the champagne lady.
Oh, yeah.
And she was the only other female on the show. What was it like for you back then?
We were little. I was 12. Janet was like 9. And she was so glamorous and so beautiful. And she was from Texas, and she was as loud as Texas. I mean, she'd come in, "Good morning, everybody," you know. And she'd go in and she'd get her makeup, and she'd sit there, and she would spend extra time with us. She would take us in her dressing room and let us try on her costumes, and she was very famous for her Alice Lawn petticoats, exactly. And she would put them on us, and she would get us dressed, and if we had a special date, as we got a little older, like Janet and I never got a chance to do that, but Dee Dee and Peggy, if they had something special at school or a special dance, she'd let them take one of her dresses. And when we'd go on the road with her, she would also help us get dressed, do our hair. We always wanted to do our hair like Alice, you know. And she always wore Avon hand cream. She had a kind of a skin disease that was always bothering her, so she kept cream on her. And we loved her Avon hand cream, and she'd, like for Christmas, give us Avon hand cream, and she'd do our hands and rub our necks, and she ended up giving us petticoats, each of us, so we had her petticoats. But she was a special lady that we loved very much, very much.
And how about the band guys? You know, musicians are notorious.
I know they are, and can be. But being little girls, they just respected us so much and protected us. They were like our big brothers or our dads or our uncles. And they really did. There was no, and it is notorious for studios, you know, you just got the reel on the crew and all of that. They were incredible. There was no swearing. They didn't allow anything. And they'd say, "Hey, watch it. You know, one of the kids is here." Or, "The Lennons are around, stop it." They totally protected us. But I got to turn around and say we kind of protected them, too. When we'd go on the road and certain musicians would have a little bit too much to imbibe at night, in the morning, Mr. Welk would walk up and down the plane and say, "Good morning," to kind of check out, were they there? Are they okay? And we'd sit with them, and we'd get them aspirin if they needed, and we'd rub their necks, or we'd say, you know, "Oh, yeah, he's just sleeping," you know. So we just, like, protected them, too, in a way that, as children, we had no idea what that even meant, except that they were great guys, and we loved them. They were so good to us. And then there were certain ones that weren't married or didn't have families, and they would come to our family house for dinner on Sunday nights, like Aladdin and Bob Lido, and they'd come over and they became part of the family. And Thanksgiving they'd come over, and it just add to the...
I've heard you had some big Thanksgivings.
Oh, yeah, we always did. We always had, like, we'd have 5 tables of 10, and we'd have all the silverware and plates and everything, and we've had at least 50 people for Thanksgiving dinner, and we'd have a buffet, and we would draw names, draw numbers for the table, what table went and got served first, you know. But it was
who did dishes?
All of us for hours, and we'd sing. I mean, that's what we'd do. We'd all sit and sing because Mom didn't like plastic plates or paper plates. That was really important to have real plates for Thanksgiving especially. And we all did dishes, and that's where we sang so many harmonies. We'd come up with songs, and all the little kids, and we did dishes till some 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. Nobody left till it was all done, so Mom didn't have that, you know. And then we'd also, with the band, talking about the band and how special they were to us, we would have parties periodically, you know, once every couple months or something. We'd have big baseball parties in our backyard. And Mr. Welk would come over, and he'd love to pitch. He loved to underpitch, underball, you know, like softball, underhand. And the musicians would play, and we'd have big parties, and the band would come over. I mean, it was
a family.
It was that family that everybody talks about or wishes for. And we were blessed to be a part of that, starting with being little children up till, you know, we got married and had children, and they still were protecting us, and we were like their sisters.
In addition to bringing the Lennon sisters to the attention of his dad, Larry Welk was also a dear, dear friend of yours.
Oh, my gosh. He was 15 when he brought us to his dad. And Dee Dee was 15 and heard us sing. They went to a party, and he thought she was singing with the choral group. And then he got there to pick her up, and it was a little bit late, and he heard us, and he said, you know, I'm going to tell my dad about you. And about a month later, he called, and he said, my dad's home sick with a cold, and he can't get out of the house. And he said, you know, those little girls you keep bugging me about, we'll have them come over and sing. So we went over and we sang for Mr. Welk, and just walking into his elegant home, and he had on this gorgeous maroon satin smoking jacket. He had velvet slippers on. I mean, we just thought, oh my gosh, you know, little girls from Venice, California, what did we know? And it was just incredible to be in his home. Mrs. Welk was so sweet. And we sang the song He, which was a hit for the McGuire sisters. And he said, would you consider being on my Christmas show?
You've sung for 7 presidents.
We have.
You've done the Ed Sullivan show, everything that's part of our pop culture. What was that like growing up in the spotlight?
You know, when we first started, even the first time we were on the show, and I was in 7th grade, so I was 12 years old, I was so scared of what my friends at school would say or think of me or think I was big, you know, that I didn't tell anybody. And I came home, and it was Christmas Eve, so we were out of school already, and it was live then. So I was scared to go back to school because Mr. Welk asked us to go on and be on after that. And I remember telling my mom, you know, I don't want to tell anybody I'm on television. You know, they'll think I'm a brat or that I really think I'm something. And she said, you know, anybody that you tell, if they're your real friends, they'll stay your friends and they'll be so happy for you. If they're not your real friends, that's how they'll tease you. So that's how you're going to know, and you should be proud of your job, you know, and what you do. So that always kind of stayed with me at times because it was embarrassing and it was kind of difficult because at those ages, and especially going into your teenage years, you just want to be like everybody else.
When you were the darlings of the movie magazines.
All over every magazine cover, and even as we got older, I mean, there were things like what the Lennons have, the Beatles want, and it's like, you know, like what? What could that possibly be? Or what Kathy could tell Liz and Jackie about love, you know? And I always wanted to read the articles, like, what could I possibly tell them? But we were in the limelight a lot, and yet considered ourselves just the little girls around the corner, because none of us were these glamorous Shirley Temple beauties. We looked like kids around the corner, you know. Every one of us did, and it was hard to believe to do Ed Sullivan or Perry Como, or when Sammy Davis would come and say, "Hey, Kathy, Jen," I was like, you know, how do you know me or something? And one of the highlights, and I think I've shared this with you before, that we couldn't believe, is that we were a Trivial Pursuit question, and it was like, oh my gosh, you know, they do kind of know our name.
Literally a part of the pop culture.
Right, just kind of it's incredible. And that's all from starting on that show. And I think it was also such a beginning of television, that's what people did. On Saturday night, they watched the Lawrence Welk Show. On Sunday, they watched Ed Sullivan. On Monday, they watched Lucy, Milton Berle on Tuesday. And you didn't have this where you're watching 300 stations. It went on, and it was a family thing.
Yeah.
And you'd set so many people come up to us and say, hey, we grew up together, and my grandmother made me watch
I still hear people talking about
Saturday
3 generations, 4 generations watching it together.
Exactly, and it always brings up something to them, like a remembrance of, and my grandmother would set my hair for church the next day. Or we had hot chocolate. That was the time we had hot chocolate and marshmallows. And it brings back a memory to people. And in Branson, it's really special because we meet people after the show and sign and take pictures. And there'll be people coming up. And there was one man who was like 91 years old. And he came up and he just had tears rolling down his face. And he said, who would have thought at 91 I could have a dream come true? You were like my granddaughters. And here I am seeing you. And it was like, those are the reasons that you're on stage. And they're the ones that loyal public, those loyal fans that keep you there. We have been very blessed by that.
You received a star on the Walk of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
What an honor. What did that mean to you?
Well, we were shocked when they asked and to have our name, you know, with a gold television camera, and there. And for us, I think what it meant mostly is the name the Lennon sisters, but the name Lennon to honor our dad. And I'm getting emotional about it, but our mom and dad for the specialness they had and how they loved us and were so proud of us, and proud enough that they allowed us to go to regular school. We never went to Hollywood Professional School. We went to regular St. Mark's Grammar School, St. Martin's High School, and allowed us to be kids, like in a world where Hollywood kids really had a lot of problems. And we would come home after singing on a show and change diapers of our little brothers and sisters, you know, and finish the dishes. And that star represented our dad's name,
Yeah.
and what they went through, and having a big family, and to say, hey, you know, we did something that the public recognized and loved us for, and they still are that loyal. And that, you know, it's pretty special.
Well, thanks to the Lawrence Welk Show and to public television, you get to be a part of our families forever.
Isn't that
and
incredible?
Ever. And we're so grateful. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you for sharing. Love
And
you, Mary.
thank all of you for watching and continuing to watch the Lawrence Welk Show. So until next time, as Lawrence Welk always said, keep a song in your heart.